How's everyone doing? So this video is Chapter 3, Guided Program Development. So we're going to be taking the Latte selection user interface that you created in Chapter 2. We're going to be adding a few design elements, some color and some button color to make it a little more appealing to our end users. Then we're going to be adding code and comments per the specification to make it a functional application. So before we do that, let's get our folder structure ready. Go over to my flash drive. I'm going to go to my Visual Basic folder, and I have Latte selection in my Chapter 2 folder. But I want to preserve that Chapter 2 stuff. I don't want to just edit it, just in case when I'm working on it, I make a mistake and I want to start over. I can just delete what I did and start over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to paste it. No, that's not what I want to do. Here, chapter 2, copy and paste. There we go. And then I'm going to rename this chapter 2 folder to chapter 3. So these folders right now are identical. When you click on your chapter 2 and chapter 3 folders, you won't have just Latte selection. You'll have the rest of the cases that you should have completed for chapter 2. So I can open it from chapter 3 and start working on it. But then if I make a mistake and I want to start over again, I can just delete the folder, the Latte selection folder, and recopy it over. And at least I've preserved what I had at the end of chapter 2. So let's open up the solution file in Visual Studio. And this should look fairly familiar. You may need to double click on the form here to open it. And we've got our GUI that we created with our 3 buttons. Buttons look a little weird. I just want to make sure they're lined up. Align. Isn't it letting me align these things? Shift, format, align. There we go. Tops. Yeah, it looked like my select latte button was a little lower, so that looks a little better to me. Okay, so before we get started on this, let's go back and just read through the spec so we understand exactly what we're doing here. I have the spec open. For some reason, the book doesn't have the specification as part of chapter 3. You have to go back to chapter 2 to see it. But we just want to make sure that we understand everything that the spec is asking for. So this is sometimes the hardest part of doing these cases, interpreting what the specification is asking for, and then implementing it into your code. And what that takes is just kind of reading through it and understanding it. And your interpretation may be different than someone else's interpretation. And if you're working with a customer or client, you have to talk through it with them. On these, you could talk through it with another student, but you can also talk through it with me. And you know, if you're not really understanding what it's asking for, I can probably help you to understand exactly what the specification is looking for. All right, so let's read through this. So our application is Latte selection. The purpose, the Latte selection program will allow a user to select a type of latte. Our program procedures: from a window on the screen, the user should view 2 different latte types and then make a latte selection. Our algorithms, processing, and conditions. The user must be able to view choices for a pumpkin spice and mocha latte until the user selects a latte type. When the user chooses a latte type, a picture of the selected type should appear in the window. Only one picture should be displayed at a time. So if a user chooses pumpkin spice latte, only its picture should be displayed. If a user then chooses mocha latte, its picture should be displayed instead of the pumpkin spice latte. So basically you can toggle back and forth between the 2 images by clicking the buttons. When the user makes a Latte selection, a confirming message should be displayed. In addition, the user should be prevented from identifying a Latte flavor after making the selection. So once you hit select, you basically can't do anything else. After the user makes a Latte selection, the only allowable action is to exit the window. Well, anything else except exit the program. So you can toggle back and forth between the two pitchers. Once you make that selection, though, everything's disabled, and all you can do is exit out. Pretty simple. Last thing is the picture shown in the window should be selected from pictures available on the web. They actually provide pictures for you. I gave those to you on your flash drive, but if you've lost them, you can re-download them from the book website. Okay, so let's go back to our application, and I'm just going to start going through the steps in the book. So the first thing it wants us to do is change the background color or back color of our form to white. And it's this kind of gray color, and it's kind of a similar color to the buttons, not a lot of contrast there. So we're going to make the back color of our form white. So you want to make sure you're clicked on the form, not a button or a picture box. Click on the form and you'll see the handles around the form. And then we're going to scroll up or down until we see back color. These should be in alphabetical order, so that'll make it easier. Picture color now is control. Probably want us, there's 3 tabs for the different kind of colors. You want to probably click on web, and then you'll see white there. And the background color of the form changes to white. So a lot more contrast now between the buttons, the gray buttons, and the background. But the next step, it tells us to change the back color of our buttons to bisque. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. I could click each button and change the back color of each one individually, but I'd have to do that 4 times. So the easier way to do that is select the first one, hold on the shift key, and then select the rest of them. So now I have all 4 of them selected, and now I can click on my back color here, drop down, and look for bisque. Now these colors are not in alphabetical order. They seem to be grouped by common colors. So all of my reds are kind of here, and now I'm getting to my tans, and bisque is kind of a tannish orange. So I'm going to select bisque, and my buttons change to this kind of orangey fall tan color. I guess that looks okay. And the next thing it wants us to do is change the fore color of my title, my label here, my heading, to saddle brown. So I'm going to click on my label, and I'm going to look for fore color. So fore color is actually my font color. So to red, and since it is in the browns, saddle brown, there it is. It's right between chocolate and sandy brown. It's a little bit of a darker color. Okay, so that's, yeah, I guess that's kind of nice. I don't know. Design's not my thing, but I guess it looks okay. For the chapter walkthroughs and the first couple cases when it gives you the colors to do it to, I'd appreciate if you stuck to the specs. Later on in the cases, you'll have a lot of latitude with getting creative, and on those get creative. You can get creative and you can make, appropriate colors for them. But when you're given specifications, you want to stick to them. Especially when you're working and a company's paying you to do something a certain way. If they tell you to make it pink, you make it pink. They're paying you to do it. That's what you do. All right. So what's next? Okay. So we're going to put the images into our picture boxes now, or at least the pumpkin image in here. So you should have the images already downloaded in a folder in your flash drive or on your computer somewhere. If you don't, you can re-download them or just reach out to me. I can probably get them you a copy. I think I have them saved on Google Drive, so I can share that folder out with you. But I think I gave that to everybody on their flash drives. So we are going to click on our pick pumpkin picture box. That's a tongue twister. And we're going to look for the image property. The image is obviously none because we didn't put any pictures in there yet. And we have this little ellipsis, I guess they call it, which brings up a dialog for us to import the picture. So we have two options here. Project resource, which is default. That's going to bring the image into the project right here in the Solution Explorer, which we want. We want to stay away from using this local resource. This is just going to point the picture to wherever the image is located right now. So if the image is located in your flash drive, it's just going to point to a location in that flash drive. You take that flash drive out, guess what happens? That image is no longer there. The program will crash. So I'm going to click import here, and it's actually defaulting to where my pictures are. So if it wasn't, I would go to desktop, wherever it was located, Visual Basic 2000 resources, my chapter 3 folder, because that's the chapter we're on, and we have the pumpkin picture, the mocha picture that we're going to use later, and there's a couple other pictures for the other cases. I think there's 6 cases, so I guess they're probably going to have you find your own pictures and download them from the web for the rest of them. So I'm going to select pumpkin here and hit open, and then hit OK. So you'll notice that it kind of cropped the picture a little bit. So the next thing we want to do is change the size mode of this picture so the whole picture displays in this picture box. So I'm going to make sure I'm selected on my picture box, and then I'm going to scroll down until I see the size mode property. So the size mode is set to normal. I want to change that to stretch image. So it's going to take that image and stretch it to fit in the picture box. It'll stretch it up or it'll stretch it down. So in this case, it's going to stretch it down a little bit. So change to stretch image, and now I can see the whole image. Now, if my picture box was, tall and skinny, it would kind of stretch that image down and kind of squish it, which you wouldn't want because it would make the picture look kind of weird. So make sure your picture boxes are the same aspect ratio of the images that you're downloading or using. And you may have to change your GUI if that's not the case as you're going through it. So that looks good. What do we want to do next? Okay, so import the pumpkin image. It wants us to do the same thing for the mocha image. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go here and import, and we're going to click on mocha, open. Going OK, we have our mocha image, and we have to change our size mode property to stretch image. Good. So now we've got our 2 delicious looking coffees. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is set the visible property to false for both of our images, because when we run the program, we don't want them to be displayed until we select the buttons for pumpkin spice or mocha. So I'm going to select 2 of these at the same time, and I'm going to scroll down to the visible property, and I'm going to change the visible property to false. And you'll notice nothing happens. They are not invisible. They will not become invisible in design mode. They will only become invisible in runtime mode. The next thing it wants us to do is set the visible property to false for the confirmation message. So our confirmation message is this enjoy your latte selection. So we're going to select this one and make that visible false as well. Okay, so let's run our program, and when we run it, the images and the confirmation message here should not show if we did it properly, which I hope we did. There we go. All right, so we don't see the two picture boxes because we made the properties visible, and we don't see that confirmation message. Now that I run it, I'm seeing that my message here does not look like it's centered, so we're going to fix that. Going to click on these guys and go to format, and let's try that again. Look like it's sent it. I think I selected my form as well. So format, center in form, horizontally. Yeah, looks like it didn't change it. All right. Well, this looks a little wonky, I guess. All right. So moving on. The next thing we want to do is set the select lattes enabled property to false. So remember, we don't want the user to select anything until they've or selected a product until they've selected either pumpkin or mocha. So initially this should be disabled, so a user can't click on it. So we're going to click on that button, and we're going to scroll down to or scroll up to the enabled property, and we're going to change that to false. And again, nothing happens until we're in run mode. And we don't want the user to exit until they have selected something. So we're going to change the enable property of our exit button to false as well. And then let's run our program, and we should see that when we run it, these two buttons are dimmed out to show they're enabled or disabled. Yeah, so when we click on these, you can kind of see that something happens, that you're actually clicking on it, but the disabled or enabled equals false, they're grayed out and you can't really do anything. We don't have any code between these buttons, behind these buttons yet, so nothing's actually happening when I click on them. We're going to do that in the next step. But these, you can see they're disabled and nothing's actually happening. All right. The next thing we want to do is we're going to start coding. So this is where the fun starts. So in order to start coding, you have to get into entering code mode. And to do that, the best way to do it is just double click on a button or the background of the form to start an event handler. So you might have accidentally double clicked on one of your buttons in the background or a picture box, and it opened the code window and you didn't know what to do, and I told you just close it, don't worry about it. So whenever you double click on an object, it thinks you're trying to create some code in there, and what it's going to do is it's going to create an event handler. So if I double click on this pumpkin spice, it's going to go in and create this public class for the form, and then inside that class, everything is going to be inside the class. We're going to have event handlers, or they're really sub procedures for each of the buttons that you want to put code behind. So this is our button pumpkin click. So this is going to execute whenever you click on that button. So I didn't have to write this, just double clicking on the button created it for me. I could write this, but rapid application development, you don't have to. So before we do any coding, we want to start with our comments. Okay, comments are very important. I'm going to give you, as the developer, a chance to kind of document and think about what you're doing. And it's going to give other people that might be looking at your code later an idea of what you were thinking about, or just a little bit of documentation on what the program does. First thing we want to do, though, is put in some introductory comments. Okay, so this is just kind of like, say you're writing a paper for English class. What are you putting on top of the paper? You put your name, you put maybe the title or what the paper is about. You might put your teacher's name. Introductory comments are just that for a program. So to put a comment in, so there's in some languages, I think JavaScript is // C# and Java is /*. In Visual Basic, to put a comment, it's apostrophe. So the apostrophe is just right next to the enter key. It's just a single little kind of tilde looking dot thing. We're going to put a couple introductory comments at the beginning of all our programs, just kind of an introduction so everyone that's looking at your code knows exactly what it is. And this is something I'll be grading you on to make sure you have introductory comments and make sure you're commenting each of your event handlers. So this is pretty important as far as I'm concerned. So introductory comments should be right at the top, line 1 in your code. So the first comment we want is our program name. So you'll notice when I start typing this, text is green, okay? So that tells us that's a comment. So my public class and my names, they're this blue color, my objects are white, so everything kind of has its own identifying color. If something isn't the right color, you'll know maybe you did something wrong. So my program name is Latte Selection. Okay. And what do I want to put in for my next comment? What is it? We want our developer name. What did I forget? I forgot my apostrophe. Developer. We're going to put the date. I'm doing this a little bit earlier than you guys are going to be doing it. And then we're going to put the purpose of the program. So what are we doing this for? App allows customer to select a latte type. Just a brief description of what the application does. So these are our introductory comments. We need to have these in all of our programs. Something you're going to be graded on. So I think it's really important. When I'm hiring, I've mentioned this before, but when I'm hiring a developer and I'm looking at code, I ask them to write some code, or if someone brings in code samples, first thing I'm looking at is there comments in there and how good are their comments? All right, so we've got our introductory comments. So now we want to start putting code in for what happens when the user selects that pumpkin button. And if you look in the book, they have this big long paragraph of comments. They want me to put in here, this code is executed when the user clicks the pumpkin spice button. It displays the pumpkin pitcher, hides the mocha pitcher, and enables the select latte button. As far as I'm concerned, your comments should never be longer than the code you're writing. And I'm fine with you abbreviating what they have there. Especially this code is executed when the user clicks the pumpkin spice button. That is totally unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. So I am okay with comments being brief, but they should be descriptive. Think of your comments kind of like pseudocode. If you're not sure what you should be coding, think of this as notes for yourself. So I'm going to abbreviate this, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to put my comment in. You'll notice when I hit enter in here, or when I click in here, it indents it a little bit. Visual Studio will help you quite a bit with all your indentations when you're doing if statements and loops and nesting things, it does a really good job of helping keeping your code clean for you. All right. So what do we want to do? We want to display the pumpkin picture. Hide the mocha picture. And enable the select latte button. We're doing three things. We're going to have 3 lines of code. All right. So first thing we're doing is displaying the pumpkin picture. So we're going to use, when we're typing in our code, we're going to use something called IntelliSense. You really don't have a choice not to use it. It pops up. I guess you could probably disable it, but it's really going to help you when you're coding as far as syntax goes, and help you not to make mistakes. So the name of my object is pick pumpkin. So when I type in just the P, you will notice I get this nice little drop down. Okay, and it lists all of my objects, or all of the functions really that are available, functions or objects that are available to me that start with a P. So I'm going to keep typing PICP. So the only thing that starts with PICP is pick pumpkin. So if I hit the tab key, it's going to type the rest of that in for me. So pick pumpkin, that's my object. And remember, we're using dot notation, so I'm just going to hit the period, and then it's going to list all the properties that are available to me. So I want to make the pumpkin picture visible. So I'm going to type in V. It's going to bring up the visible property. I'm going to hit tab, and then we want to set the visible property equal to true. So I'm just going to type in equals and a T. It'll highlight true for me. Then I just hit enter. That's our first line of code. The next thing we want to do, according to our comments, is hide the mocha picture. So we're going to do the same thing. PICM for mocha, but visible. We want to make, so when we click on the pumpkin picture, we want to make the mocha visible, the mocha picture not visible. So we're going to set that to false. Okay. So I didn't really have to type that much. I just had to type in the F and then tab. I don't have to worry about spelling issues. And the next thing we need to do, so once the user has selected one of these buttons, is we want to enable the select button. So I'm going to start typing BTN, select, I'm going to type in the E, and enabled will be highlighted. I'm going to hit the tab, and by default it is enabled equals false, or disabled, so I'm going to make that true. Okay. I'm just going to put space at the end of this. This is kind of my programming style. I have a space below the comment, in between where the code starts, and a space after. You don't have to do it the same way. You can have your comment and your code, no space here and no space there. If you want your code a little more compact, again, that's your programming style. And that's something that I will start noticing for you guys. Some of you, you're not going to be as particular about that, and your code might be a little messier. And that's okay. We do want to try to keep our code consistent the way we do things. All right, so let's run our program and see what happens, see if this works. So what should happen if we did everything right, when I click on this pumpkin spice button, the pumpkin spice image should be displayed and this button should become enabled so I can click on it. Let's see if it works. Look at that, it did. Wonderful. So it displayed this button, hid this this picture box. It hid this picture box, but this picture box was already hidden, so it didn't matter. Um, but you want to put that code in there so you'll be able to toggle back and forth. And then it enabled my select latte button, so I can select that if I want to, if that's my selection. Good. So we're working. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to code the select button event handler. So I'm going to go back to my form and I'm going to double click on my select button. And you'll notice it creates a new event handler for me. So everything that I want to happen uh, in my select button has to go between these two private sub and end sub here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to enter our comments. So what is it telling me to do here for comments? This code is executed when the user clicks the select button. It disables the pumpkin spice button. So again, we're not going to type in this code is executed for every single button. It's totally unnecessary. So what we're going to do here, we're going to start with our comment. And we're going to say disable the pumpkin spice button. Select button. And mocha button. Um, and we hide instruction label. You'll notice my code is now kind of going off the screen. So I'm just going to hit enter and I'm going to put my comments in 2 lines. Displays the confirmation label. And enables the exit. All right. So now we can do all that stuff. So we're going to say B T N pumpkin dot enabled equals false. BTN mocha dot enabled equals false. And a select button as well. BTN select. So that's where enabling the button we're on. Dot enabled equals false. We want to hide the instruction label. So we're going to say LBL instructions dot visible equals false, and display the confirmation label. So LB, oops, careful of that. I deleted my end sub here. So we'll just put that back in there. You got to be careful about accidentally deleting these things, because if I were to delete that end sub and leave it there, the program wouldn't compile. So every private sub needs to have an end sub. So label instructions, confirmation, display the confirmation label. So LBL confirmation dot visible true, and button exit dot enabled true. All right, so that's everything we need to do on that button, I believe. So display the pumpkin spice button, select button, and mocha button. Oh, disable. So we set enabled equals false. Hide the instruction label. Instruction label is visible. Well, display the confirmation label and enable the exit button. So that's everything we need to do for this button. Let's see what's next. So the next thing is we need to write code for our Mocha button. So we're going to go over, double click on Mocha. And this is going to be very similar to our pumpkin button, except it's going to be the opposite. So we want to display the Mocha picture, hide the pumpkin picture, and enable the select latte button. All right. So say pick Mocha visible equals true. Pick pumpkin visible equals false, and false, not dash false. Oop, just happened. Don't know what that is, but I think it's okay. And then button select dot enabled equals true. All right. So let's run the program and see if we did this right. So now we should be able to toggle back and forth between pumpkin spice and mocha and select latte. It tells me to enjoy my selection, and then I can exit the program, but we haven't put any code under exit yet, so we can't do anything there yet. So let's see what our next step is. Assuming it's going to be entering the code for the exit button. So we're going to click on the exit button. And again here, it has us write this big crazy comment. This code is executed when the user clicks the exit button. It closes the window and terminates the program. So all we need here for a comment is exit program. And all we need here for, we're actually going to call a built-in function called close. All you have to type in is close. It's going to put these two parentheses in there. That just means it's a built-in Visual Basic procedure. And I think that's it. I think we're done. So we've got our button pumpkin click, our button select click, our button mocha click, under 50 lines of code, so that's not too bad. Our close function, let's run it just to make sure everything's working properly. So we can click pumpkin spice, mocha, toggle back once we select, displays enjoy your latte. I can exit the program, and we're done. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So that's it for this program. The rest of the cases in this chapter should be pretty straightforward for you. Keep in mind as you're going through these programs, some of the things that it might ask you to do might seem like there's probably a better way to do it. And that may be true for a lot of these cases. They want you to work on specific skills for what's appropriate for this chapter. A lot of times there's a much better way of doing things, but you don't know how to use if statements yet, or variables or loops. So they'll have you do something, and it's probably not the best way to do it, but that's okay. You're going to build your skills and learn how to use some certain functionality. And then later on, a few chapters later, you realize there was probably a better way to do it. And that's okay. When we're learning, we often don't do things the best way there is. So yeah, that's it for this chapter. Make sure you save your program, save all, exit out, and then start working on the cases. All right, thanks guys. Have a good day.